Good morning, UACC family. I want to do something. I'm going to preach on a passage from James 3, verses 1 through 12, and I'm going to preach on the same passage for the next 3 weeks on Monday mornings. And James is talking here in these few verses about the tongue, about the words we use, and about the way we speak with each other. And I want to talk about it from three different vantage points. And today what I want to talk about is the idea that control over the tongue, James is telling us that it is a sign of maturity, to have control over the way we speak to people. He makes this point earlier in his epistle in the negative. In chapter 1, verse 26, he says, if anyone thinks he is religious and can't control his tongue, this man's religion is worthless. So he's saying if you can't control what's coming out of your mouth, there's an immaturity there and something about your faith that is missing that you need to latch onto. But here, he's talking to those who aspire to leadership. He's talking to those who have some form of authority over others. And he says this in James 3, 1 and 2. He says, not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. So the idea here is that people who aspire to be teachers, people who have responsibility or leadership over other people, people who are looking over other people, these are people who should be more mature, and yes, they're not going to be perfect in everything they say, but they should have some control over what comes out of their mouths. They should be able to control those things, and the idea here is that since the tongue is the most difficult thing in the body to control, that if we can control our tongue, that demonstrates a level of maturity that we should have if we're going to be in leadership. But the fact is that these leadership roles are not necessarily things that we aspire to or that we try to get ourselves into. Quite often, they are just things that come to us regardless of what we're doing, whether we want it or not. We're often called upon to be in positions of authority over another person. For instance, many of us are parents. That's something we've always wanted to do, but we don't think about the fact that that puts us in authority over someone smaller and weaker than us. Many of us are bosses, or managers, or advisors, or coaches, or mentors, in situations where other people are looking up to us. And Paul is making the point that increased authority means increased impact for our words. If I'm authority over another person, that means it's like putting a megaphone on the things I'm saying. It's like whatever I would have said to someone else that they could blow off, when I say it to that person, it's like screaming it in their ears. It's like really making it a huge thing. So as those who have influence in the lives of others, we must understand that we need to have some sense of control over that, and that maturity is important for those who exercise leadership. I want you to think about this. How many of you can remember a time in your life when just one thing, one phrase that somebody else said had a tremendous impact on your life? Maybe it was something really hurtful that you remember the exact words because even today you can remember how those words cut you when they were said. Maybe it was many years ago. Or maybe it was just the opposite. Maybe it was something that affirmed you and made you feel so good and so accepted that you still tell people today how nice it was to hear those words at some point in your life. Or maybe you remember a phrase that was repeated over and over and over to you, maybe when you were a child in the home, or maybe at work or at school, by friends or by people who picked on you. Things that made you feel bad, like you're lazy, or why can't you be as good as this person? Why don't you do better at your schoolwork? Oh, this is good, but it's not good enough. Why aren't you more this, or why aren't you less that? Or maybe you remember empowering words that were told to you over and over. Things like, I pray for you daily, or I love you no matter what you do. Or maybe you're wonderful, regardless of the situation in your life. Things that just were repeated to you over and over and made you feel like you had worth and value. You know, James says not many of us should become teachers, but the fact is that we already are teachers. There are already people in our lives over whom we have influence, people who are smaller than us, more fragile and weaker than ourselves, who need us and to whom our words will have a great impact. So let's take time today to consider how our words may lift up or tear down, encourage or discourage, inspire or deflate. Pray that God will give you the right words and that you will use them to bring joy and light into the lives of people around you. God bless you. Have a great day and use your words wisely.